to the Startup Builder Live Q&A. This is the place for any startup founder to ask any burning questions that are keeping you up at night and get answers from experts who have worked with hundreds of founders and their teams. This is streaming live to LinkedIn and YouTube. The video will be available on both of these platforms, and any resources that we talk about will also get added to the description to that channel. My name is Sarah Bell, and I am your host today. I'm a co-founder and startup building advisor at LeapSheep. I'd like to introduce Kirk Drage, who's also a co-founder and CEO of LeapSheep. Kirk's backstory includes an international career at Microsoft, where he and his team built the Microsoft startup community from zero to thousands of startups across Asia Pacific, overseeing dozens of startup programs internationally. Kirk's lived in Silicon Valley, working for multiple startups, building product, winning early customers, and raising capital. The firms he's worked with have spanned deep tech, consumer, devices, SaaS, and AI. In 2016, Kirk co-founded LeapSheep with a vision to flip the 95% startup failure rate. Kirk and his team have developed Startup Builder, which is education, software, and AI to coach founders to startup success and prevail against the odds. Startup Builder has been developed and refined with hundreds of founders and is expanding its tribe of fans and advocates. Kirk has a young family and a particular soft spot for introverts, as he is one himself. Kirk, it's great to have you here. How has your week been so far?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, really good, really good. Spoken to lots of founders around the world, getting a bit of interesting perspective on how the financing landscape is changing in the US compared to Australia, for example. But yeah, really good. It's always good to speak to founders and understand what they're working on. So Thanks. Great to have you, Jenn, on.
Okay, and today we are absolutely delighted to have Jenn Wrenn Henry with us. Jenn is a managing partner at the VentureUs fund, which has recently launched. She brings over 25 years of business and tech experience, specializing in deal screening, due diligence, and growth strategies for early stage startups. As an active member of various investment groups, she has a unique perspective on investment decision making and particularly supporting female-led startups. She's worked with hundreds of startups and has literally seen it all. She's just launched a new fund, VentureUs, and with VentureUs, Jenn plans to bring a whole new way to support startups through collaborative decision making from the brightest LPs in Seattle. Jenn, it is great to have you here. Can you tell us what is unique and special about VentureUs, and what can founders expect that is different from existing funds?
Great. Well, thanks for the fabulous introduction, Sarah, first of all. And we have a brand new fund, and we think what we're trying to do is we're trying to have the best of both worlds for everybody. We sit somewhere in between an angel group and a VC fund because we want to be able to utilize the collective intelligence of our investors, and our investors are also very interested in being involved and growing their investment skills. Unlike an angel group, we invest collectively as well, so we can write bigger checks together. But unlike a VC firm, we have a very active investment base of LPs that like to get involved and help out and help companies grow. So that's a little bit about us.
Great. That sounds fantastic. And is there any particular ideal startup that you have in mind when you started VentureUs? In terms of investment thesis, I'll be specific.
I'll be semi-generalized, I guess, on it. But one thing that we specialize in is doing a deeper due diligence than some other funds might do. We really dig in and want to understand a company, and I think that we have a very diverse pipeline of opportunities. And so really, maybe this is a specific example, but like a couple of weeks ago, I had someone come to me and say, I have a hardware product and all the SaaS people in Seattle are not interested. They want tech products. There are not a lot of investors that are interested in what I'm doing, but I am ready to scale, ready to explode, and that, like, the overlooked gems is, I think, what we specialize in and what we're looking for. We think that sometimes for various reasons, some companies get overlooked that are fantastic deals for us and a win-win situation for everybody. And so, like, for me, I think that is our ideal situation where we can, maybe not everybody's going to understand what the founder is doing and take the time to really dig into the business and why it has so much potential. And so I think that we are able to find some really great opportunities that might be otherwise overlooked.
It's music to founders' ears, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I think the challenge of being a founder and trying to find the right fund, the right geography, the right stage, the right industry, and what you're basically saying is put that to one side. If you've got potential traction, we want to talk to you. Would that be a fair summary?
Yes, exactly. There's some boundaries around that, which is like, we have to feel like we have enough collective knowledge to, like, intelligently make an investment. There's some things that, like, we don't have specialists on our team. I mean, I'm a local Seattle girl, so we definitely have, a large Microsoft contingency in our investor base, and but we do have some diversification. But we have a lot less healthcare, right? So, like, if you've got a health tech or you've got a tool, we probably have enough expertise. But if you have a therapeutic, that is definitely, like, outside of our scope. But for us, that also gives us that makes us attractive to investors as well, because we're able to give them a diversified portfolio by investing with us. So I think it's like I said, I think it's a win for everybody.
Kirk, did you want to add in, because you've obviously been a part of various funds in your time? Did you want to add any thoughts in at this stage?
Yeah, I think we were chatting earlier, Jen, about one of the biggest challenges that founders have is knowing what investors are looking for. And I think when you're an early founder that's going through the cap raise process for the first time, there's just so many things that you don't know. And when you find an investor that can actually help explain what they want and what a success looks like, and even if you get a no, why do you get that no? You were talking about that. That's something that you really focus on. That's I think that's great. That's the sort of investor that we like to introduce our founders to, because it's going to help everybody.
Yeah, exactly. We care about investing in the ecosystem, and sadly, one of my biggest jobs is to say no on a regular basis. But that doesn't mean I don't want companies to be successful, and it doesn't mean that we aren't potentially going to invest in the future. So if I can leave them, they've invested their time in coming to pitch to us. If I can leave them with something that's actionable or tangible, a tangible understanding of why we said no, that can help them either make that pivot or wait till they hit that milestone, come back to us, or fix their pitch and get it with the right investor. We want to do that for them. So that's definitely what we tried to do.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, all right. And last but not least, I would like to welcome founders who have joined us live. It's great to have you here. You're welcome to drop any questions that you have using the chat button on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll prioritize those questions. We have also received a lot of questions from founders who have sent them in advance, who've obviously seen it's a great opportunity, Jen, to ask you a load of questions, both about your fund and capital raising in general. So I will just get started with the questions, and I'll just add them in as we go. Okay, so this question comes from a founder in Seattle, and they have asked, what does pitching to VentureUs look like as a process?
Great. First, we're always trying to make sure we're clear on what that looks like with all our founders, so they know what they're getting into. So it's kind of like a funnel. You start small. We use an online platform called Dealum, because, as I mentioned, we have active investors in the way we're structured. That gives everybody an ability to look at what our deal flow is and help give us feedback. So you've got to create a logon, but we have created the simplest form possible to give us just enough data to kind of do a preliminary look and see whether or not we think it's a good general fit. So that's kind of like the pre-screening for us. Step one is to just submit your deck and some company basics. We have to check insanity check that you are within our thesis because we are geographically bound. VentureUs specifically invests in Pacific Northwest companies, so we want to make sure that somehow you're Pacific Northwest connected. Although with today's outsource workforce being online, that the definition of that can definitely vary. But that's so step one is just submit to us. But of course, usually before that, most of my day today was talking with founders. I want to make sure that they put their best foot forward and that I can be an advocate for them and set their expectations about what the process looks like. So that's kind of the very preliminary an intro, however it works, submitting to us online. And the way we're structured is we have an investment board, which is about 30% women, which we're working on increasing, but that looks at your deck and kind of does a sanity check, and especially around like, do we think this is a realistic market for venture? Does it fit within our thesis? And we all comment on it and have an internal discussion online. And then decide whether or not we think we'd like to move you forward to screening. Screening with us, again, a little bit more of your time, a little bit digging deeper. And so we want to have a 20-minute conversation with the founder, usually just about kind of what we think are our biggest questions around it that would help us decide whether or not we think that we should go another step deeper. And at that point, we'll decide whether or not to move into diligence. When we move into diligence, we usually will kind of oftentimes do like some quick checks over what our biggest potential interest questions, concerns are, and then we'll ask for a deal room and assign a team and start working through the list of kind of the end to end of how you're running your business. And so, every step along the way, we get a little bit deeper. You'll notice that I haven't said that you pitched us yet.
Yes.
Which is something that's unique to us. At first, it was an experiment, but it seems to be working pretty well. Previously, when we were investing, we were at every step along the way, the founder would have to pitch to like an extended group of people. So we asked only for a single pitch from founders. We want them to pitch to our membership. And so a lot of times companies will be in diligence when they pitch to the membership. And we have member meetings once a month. So whenever that falls, and a lot of times the diligence team will already have some insights. And so we are able to have really rich conversations with our entire investment base. They get exposure to the pitches, and founders get to meet us in person. And potentially we like to do SPVs on the side for giving our investors the opportunity to double down on the deals that they especially like. So we have a very unique model when it comes to that, when it comes to the pitching and the SPV doubling down, for lack of a better term, around that. But very similar to a lot of other structures where it's like, the deeper you go, the more of the covers we'll want pulled back, and the deeper we will want to dig.
I'm really interested in that pitch process. Do you find that, because I find with a lot of investment groups, that pitch process can turn into a bit of a gotcha conversation, where it's looking for holes in the founders in not necessarily the most constructive way. It's sometimes about investors showing other investors that they know their stuff. So does that sort of help avoid that situation?
Yeah, yes. I think that we have a particular culture that is very supportive within our group. But there's always some level of that. And I do actually, I haven't thought about it that way. But 100%, I think that happened in our last meeting, where, well, not to that degree, but like there was a comment that might have been taken more seriously had there not been a diligence team who truly understood the answer with the founder out of the room and who could support them and say, nope, actually, you're wrong here. Here's the insight on it.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Really good. I love it. Innovation in the investment space. I love it.
Yeah, well, we knew we needed to evolve what we had been doing, and so a lot of this has been an experiment. But we're about 3 months past our first close. We've written our first 2 checks, and so it's like, oh yeah, no, this is like, yeah, actually, it is working. Or at first it was all in our heads, and now we see the wheels turning, and we're just always trying to do better, make the most of everybody's time, and especially give a good experience to founders.
Yeah, really good.
So a lot of this, so from the sounds of it then, in the kind of the very beginning, the storytelling has to be done through the pitch deck. And then, of course, the charisma equation gets kind of uncovered through the initial conversation. And then it's the actual storytelling of the pitch that comes much later. I do think that's going to benefit a whole new class of founders. Particularly some that we work with at LeapSheep, actually. It's fabulous.
Yeah, well, and I commonly have to say, could you not upload your 5-minute pitch deck? We need a little more details to make these initial decisions. I want you to put your best foot forward, but it's true. You can lead with, the company, and then your personality, or if you're an introvert, or we were just having a very, I heard a very interesting talk about how many founders have ADHD.
I guess it probably solves one of the problems that founders have when they have to pitch multiple times, and you've got half the room that's seen you pitch before, and the other half of the room hasn't seen the pitch, and that's a really difficult situation for a founder to be in. Yeah.
Well, and that gives us time to coach on the pitch beforehand too. If we see the deck and we're like, we love what you're doing, but like we see these improvements that need to be made, then again, it's back to like helping founders be successful on their journey with us. So
okay, great, thank you. That's really, really helpful. I've got a next question, which leads us nicely into a broader conversation about capital raising. So one of our Seattle-based founders has asked for a bit of a summary from your unique perspective about what the fundraising environment is like at the moment. I know it's a topic of conversation that comes up at every event I go to in Seattle. So Jenn, I'd love your unique perspective on this.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel like I have a weird perspective on it because, when SVB and all the craziness happened in the past, I've spent the last year building a fund. And so I kind of spent like 9 months not investing, not because I wasn't wanting to invest, but because I was busy dealing with fund management and administration and financial regulations. And so I was kind of out of the loop when all of this kind of went down. And now we're dealing with some of the aftermath. And, there's, I guess, a few common patterns I've seen since we've started working with founders this year. One is they have unrealistic expectations on valuation or how much they're going to raise. It does seem to be a difficult time to raise. Now, I think last year it was easier to raise if you had AI in your name. But I think that even that is changing. It's funny, last week was Seattle AI Week, and I found that a lot of the conversations, even like at the AI Summit, were just about business fundamentals. It wasn't about AI as much as like, understand your customer and
Yeah.
and so I think it's starting to ease up a bit, but the biggest road bump or that causes companies to go out of business is cash flow. And so I think the Seattle market is pretty good at keeping things thrifty. And like, I think in general, where we are, there's been a lot less companies going out of business and more tight belt tightening. But even like I was just even raising A rounds that, I'm seeing bridge being pitched to us right now of fantastic companies. So, yeah, I think it's still a tough time. I think it's starting to ease up, but the founders that have been out there in the trenches, I'm finding come back to me with more realistic raises.
Yeah.
And shorter milestones that they can, milestones to reach where they can prove their value. Yeah. So instead of raising the big raise, small raise to hit the right milestones so that then you can really get the traction. So it's tough, but there's still plenty of check writing going out here. So
yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah, Kirk, I think I'd be keen for you to chat a little, because one thing that we've noticed, and again, obviously we're coming from the founder side, is that, investments that used to be made traditionally by angel investors at an idea stage, now that idea stage tends to have to also include like an actual software built as a product and some traction with early users and evidence of kind of like customer delight. And so it feels a lot like the stages are moving kind of earlier and earlier. Kirk, be interested in your perspective on that.
The word you use there, Jen, is business fundamentals. I think that's very true on the founder side as well. The founders that we're talking to, they're saying everyone seems to want the fundamentals in place. Like Sarah said, they want to see traction. They want to see evidence of customers' demand, and that wasn't necessarily the case 12 or 18 months ago. And for some founders that haven't been around in the space that long, this is really new news, right? It didn't used to be the case. This used to be business as normal. We've been in kind of this weird bubble situation the last, several years, and so that's new news to a lot of people. So, and I think for us, it's just making sure that we're continuing to communicate those fundamentals, so that everyone's expectations are super clear and no one gets disappointed.
Yeah, and even like the smallest little experiments you can do to demonstrate product market fit, right? Like that matters. I do think that there is some definite risk aversion, but I also see some players trying to focus on pre-seed more, because that's where the better deals are. You're taking bigger risks, but you have bigger returns, and so. I think as the market moves one way, there will be some adjustments the other direction as well.
Yeah. I think the other thing I would say, Sarah, is I've been speaking to a few founders around the AI thing, and you definitely see the gloss coming off AI a little bit, and people saying that most of the opportunities are going to be in a lot of the the traditional places where companies have been successful, like B2B SaaS, and adding AI into those existing kind of products. And it's really yet to be seen whether that's an opportunity for new companies to come in and grab, or whether the existing incumbents are just going to add AI to their stack and be the successful players. And I think that's it's a really interesting space to watch at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and only time will tell. I have a sneaking suspicion that it may well be the latter. incumbents adding AI to their products, but then there's always space for innovation where they're not looking.
Yeah.
Okay, I will move on to the next question here. Now, Jenn, obviously this next question does depend on the particular stage you're at, whether it's pre-seed, seed, or anything else. But I will get you to answer this one, which is, what are the milestones that you need to achieve to recognize that raising is actually the right answer? And is it most appropriate for you to comment on, say, pre-seed stage?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I feel like investment-wise, to be honest with you, our sweet spot, our comfort zone is seed, and we're trying to define what that looks like for us for pre-seed. And that's kind of an ongoing conversation that we're having as a team. But from a founder's perspective, what milestones? I think regardless of stage, that's almost two things. It's milestones, right?
When is raising? Two questions.
I would like to invest in something that's more than an idea, and it does have even the tiniest little experiments going on for product market fit. But raising is the right answer. That's a whole different can of worms there. Because you don't want to raise when you're desperate.
Yeah.
And you want to raise when it's going to be easy, you don't need it, and you've got a great story. So, depending on where you're at along the path, pre-seed is really all about the market and about the founding team. You don't have a lot more to base it upon. Milestones are really just some way to prove that what you have has some value to, and that you understand your customers. And then as you go along, right, it's I just need, that needs to grow. You need to show that you're going to have momentum. It's really, everybody defines various stages differently too, depending on what you call pre-seed and seed. But so it's really just a growing ability to demonstrate that you're headed in the right direction. And I'll add a random comment here, because I was just talking about this with a founder today. But I've had founders in the past be nervous about telling me that they've pivoted. And that, I want to hear that you've pivoted, because that means you're learning about your customer, and you are changing your product to meet their needs, and you are in a continual learning mode, instead of kind of headed down one way and expecting your customers to meet you there. So
great. There's so much to unpack there. Kirk, I'm going to direct this to you around, how do you recognize that whether raising is the right thing for you? Because we talk about this with founders day in, day out. So I'd love your insights on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on something that Jenn said there, which is so important, which is actually asking investors what they mean by seed and pre-seed. I think this is one of the things about startup world, is we all use these terms like pre-seed and product market fit and MVP and all these sort of things, and don't assume that everyone knows what they mean or everyone's got the same definition. I think it's the most important thing you can do, because that clarity will give you so much ability to move forward, a better ability to move forward. And when it comes to is raising the right thing for you, I think picking up on what you said, Jenn, is the right thing is don't raise when you're desperate. And I think there's a lot of founders that kind of assume, coming into startup world, having maybe an external view, reading the news and media and so forth, that the default path is have an idea, go get some capital, chase that idea, and that's not always the best path, particularly if you don't have experience in this space. The learning curve is really steep, and you don't want to be using someone else's money where you've got expectations to be on that learning curve. And it's also it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's not the first to market that generally wins. It's the first to product market fit. And it's often, the early players that get in. I mean, look at Friendster and MySpace and Facebook, right? It's not the first players that win. And so I think as a founder, you've got to take on a longer term perspective. And, if you can do things frugally and you can learn cheaply to start with and find your feet, it means that when you're finally ready to take capital, you'll use it in a much better way and you'll use it efficiently and your chances of success go way up.
Yeah, it's a really compelling story, I think, for investors if the reason why founders are raising is because there is so much evidence of market pull and, customer demand, and they can't possibly meet that within their current operating model. That's a really compelling story if you're an investor. It's like, you could make a lot more money and grow market share, but all you need is a bit of capital to help you on your way. That's a really interesting story. Yeah, and typically if the opposite is true, so if you're not making the progress that you want to make or things aren't quite going to plan, typically what we tend to advise founders to do is, can you find a way of bringing in extra revenue, whether that's kind of bringing in some contract income or other way to keep yourself going or minimize your team so that you can kind of do any pivots that you might need to do and get you on track so that you're in a great position in order to then raise. Because as Jenn, I think the key point from you was, never try and raise when you're desperate, because, if it doesn't come through in your pitch, then it will absolutely come through in due diligence.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a question that I know a founder really would like to know, and I'm just looking for it in my list. And it is really, this question is, what qualities are you looking for from a founder or a founding team? And particularly this is true, Jenn, for first-time founders, because typically if you're a second, third, fourth-time founder, you've got a load of experience. You might have an exit event behind you, but if you're a first-time founder, what qualities are you looking for that would really help you? If everything else is the same, what are those qualities that you're looking for?
Passion for what you're doing, because it's not going to be an easy path. So you really have to have a passion for getting your product to market and for the customer and for getting it to the finish line is one. And another big thing, you hear a lot coachability. The trick is when you're pitching, you might be getting a lot of coaching, right? So it's not just coachability, it's also the discernment to pick the nuggets that you think will really impact how how you're presenting yourself, how you're pivoting your company, and taking that advice that you think will have the best impact. But I think coachability and passion, and I guess if I was going to, I'm not sure if this is another one or just part of coachability, but just awareness. Every founding team is going to have gaps, right? And so when I look at what your roadmap is and how you plan to execute and grow, I want you to either be aware or be able to learn where the gaps on your team are and where you really should be supplementing yourself first. In terms of skill set on the team. So I'd say those are kind of the big ones for me. How about you?
For investors, I think the way that I think about it, I'd love your view, Jenn, is it's a bit like finding a life partner. When you decide to find a life partner, there's all these great things that you love about them, but of course everybody has flaws, but you love the good things so much that the flaws are fine. I'm happy with the flaws. And that's the same way that, certainly I've approached investments in the past is, of course, the flaws are there, but I just love the opportunity and the founder and the company so much that, I'm willing to work with those flaws. And I think sometimes founders have this view that they have to present this perfect version of themselves. And that's, it's like, dating an Instagram model or something it's just not reality, right?
Yeah. Well, and if you're, if you're presenting yourself as perfect, that makes me nervous because I'm like, okay, what are you hiding? Like you can't solve a problem that you don't know you have, right? And so like if I want you to know what your gaps are or what your opportunities for growth are, and then we can figure out how we're going to address them forward. So I don't want a perfect founder. Perfect founders make me nervous.
Nervous, and I guess you want to add value too. It's not just about the money. It's you've got a whole team of LPs that have got skills, and you want to be able to apply that to get a competitive advantage.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that, Jenn, because one of the challenges that we try and help founders overcome is presenting those, things that perhaps aren't quite going to plan or gaps in the team that they know that they have, and actually being able to present that to have an honest conversation about it. Because I think founders naturally are always trying to put their best selves forward, presenting the best version of themselves, and the reality is that that's so far from what investors really want to see. So glad that we're spreading the message here.
Yeah. You've got But the truth is powerful, right? And like being real to yourself is it provides a level of trust with investors, right? That like you can be on the same page. So I guess that's why I'm scared of the perfect founders, right? It's like I don't trust. I don't know like what's hiding under here. Although if any of you on the call are perfect founders, I'd love to talk to you.
That leads me on to a question that we've had come in, which is around what do you do as part of your due diligence? Because you spoke about this before, and I think one of the unique things that separates you from other investment groups is the real depth of due diligence that you do. So this particular question is from a founder who said they've heard that your fund is known for deep due diligence. Could you explain that? And then what exactly is the benefit to founders of that deep due diligence?
Yeah. Well, our diligence, previously we used to write like 30-page memos, which was out of control. And, we'd have a whole list of topics we wanted to explore. And, for VentureUs, we're like, okay, how do we look and dig in without just trying to be verbose and, and get to the really questions that help us make a decision. And so we've kind of taken the same list of things we want to dig into, everything from like, what are the deal terms to product market fit to team. And we use a spreadsheet with, and we've got a set of data that we like to collect for each company. But the approach that we take is we continue asking questions and continue the diligence process as long as there are open questions that would change our decision. And so we keep a list of questions, say, we're concerned about all these things, but there's this one thing we want to dig into that could change our mind to a yes, or the other way around. We get enamored with we're excited about a company and we're like, but we really need to dig into this one thing to make sure that we are making the right decision. And so that's the approach that we take. It's fairly structured with a standard set of focus areas that we dig into and look for in a deal room that we assign across our diligence team to each have a focus within that, and then and then all convene together to sanity check kind of where we're at. So we try to do it as efficiently as possible, but we've got a set. We're trying to have a standard process, and not be emotion led. Sometimes diligence is a journey where we think, I'm joining this diligence team because I am not sure I like this investment. And then you're like, the deeper I've dug, I actually like all my concerns have been addressed, right? And like there's this journey that as an investor we go through the more we dig through it. So we try to not make it extend for a long duration, but the benefit of that to founders is, well, okay, wait, it could, and granted, I've mostly just done diligence with this team, so this is just how I know things are. But your founder time is precious, and so a lot of founders have come back to us and said, you asked me so many questions, like it was really, you made me work hard, but they always follow that with, or I guess almost always follow that with, like, you helped me really think through my business and address some things that I hadn't even thought about. And so, like, on the other side of a deep diligence process, you come out with a better business plan. We've worked with someone recently who said, I know you guys may or may not invest just based off of the general where they're at, but they said, we're trying to get ready for an A round, and we know that if we diligence with you, we will be way better prepared for this A round when it comes around.
Yeah, what a great attitude.
Yeah, that's the right attitude to have.
Totally. And I think there's some data around, maybe from Startup Genome, that sort of shows the number of hours of diligence directly correlates to investor returns, which is great for founders to see that an investor is going to do that level of diligence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And what happens, because I know you make collaborative decisions, what happens if it's an almost unanimous yes, but one or two LPs have got concerns?
Well, so it used to be that the LPs all voted previously. Now it's our investment board that votes, but we actually let our LPs participate throughout the process from the beginning. So they kind of get more access from end to end as we progress through a deal. But ultimately, it is the investment board that is voting, mainly because previously, when the whole fund was voting and we had a really, really long memo, people weren't voting. They weren't informed because not everybody had the bandwidth to understand the investments. Maybe they read the executive summary and voted. And I want the people that are closest to the problem, or not to the problem, but that's my Scrum days coming back, making the decisions, right? The people with the best information to be making the decisions. So, but we, in our hearts, we would love it to be unanimous when it comes to our investment board voting. But we also don't want to have groupthink.
Totally, yeah.
And we all have slightly different investment theses, which and life experiences that we do have, like, standards for what we do want to invest in, but some, there are different there's always different perspectives and opinions, and without that, I don't think we would make as good of investments. Yeah. So I wish it was a little quickly out when it came to investments, but that shouldn't be the case, because we want to be really thoroughly thinking about the decisions we're making, and not just take the easy route. So sometimes I wish we'd take the easy route, but I think we're better at that because we're not. So
that does make sense. And it leads me nicely on to my next question, which is, how do you determine how much to invest in the startups who meet your quality bar? And this is from one of our founders in San Francisco, and it's a great question.
That is a great question. And, early on when I was on diligence teams, they would ask me how much I thought we should invest in. I'm like, why are you asking me this question? But now I have to make this decision myself in my role. So, for us, there's a lot of factors that play into it, right? How much we raise. It's kind of a tough time to raise, and we're a new fund. So like, we are not writing as big of checks as we used to. Really, for us, we want to make 6 to 10 investments every year. And so you divide how much money we have to invest by that. And then, that's what our average check size is that we get to make. And we want it to be impactful to founders. So that's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is the impact that we can make on a company. If it's, our investment size is like, average 200 right now. And for this year, for our first year, which is awesome. But if someone's raising $3 million and we've just got our cute little $200,000 check, and they have strategic investors and they don't really need us, well, like, maybe we'd rather save our bigger checks for somewhere where we can be a true partner and advocate for an investment. And also, we're trying to balance our portfolio. So, there's all these things that may or may not have anything to do with like stage or founder or how much we like the investment, that impact our check size. But we do like to, we like to at least have a well-communicated range so that founders know what they're coming into with us. But yeah, I don't know how the big boys, so the real world does it, but I know it's very similar. It has to be.
Yeah, that's a great insight for founders, because often you think as a founder you just turn up to investors that have this pot of money and they're making very rational, very well defined decisions based on almost an algorithm, but it's a very complex algorithm.
Yeah, exactly.
And I imagine sometimes it's not even an algorithm. Finger in the air.
Yeah.
This is a great one, and I know this comes up a lot when we are working with founders, and it's what are the common red flags that you see in a pitch that founders should avoid at all costs? We've talked earlier on about the challenges with founders kind of making out like they know everything and they don't have any flaws or faults. But what common red flags do you see, Jenn?
Well, red flags might be a little strong.
Or yellow flags, also fine.
Warning flags. Just a reasonable pet peeve is we'll see school logos, Ivy League school logos on a pitch deck, and then it's like, oh, they took like a weekend course at Harvard. Back to like transparency and honesty, like that doesn't set you up necessarily for a trusting relationship. But that's not a red flag. That's not going to like screech things to a halt. But it's always like okay, that kind of changes our approach potentially to things. So I don't know. There's not like a lot of red flags, but, and I'm sure you coach this for your pitches, but like yellow flag is, you're not showing me the money. You don't know who you're pitching to. It's like, I am sure you have a great product, but I don't necessarily even want to know the details about your product until I know that there is a big market and that you are able to sell and you have a plan for growth where it's a good investment for me. And so like knowing who you're pitching to in your audience, not a yellow flag, I don't know, but it's an important factor to be aware of, right? It's not I don't need your sales pitch. I want to know why I can help my investors be successful by investing in you, and how we can have a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, and Kirk, you and I we've worked with hundreds of founders on their pitches, and we also assess pitches as well using our pitch assessment. And so we've got quite a lot of opinions on this. Kirk, how about you? Red/yellow flags in pitches that founders should avoid?
I mean, there's a bunch of obvious ones, like make sure you're clear on and I think to qualify this question, every investor that you ask what is the perfect pitch, you get a different answer. And I think this is the hardest thing for founders, and certainly for us when we started LeapSheep, we thought, okay, we're going to build the perfect pitch deck guidance, and that was our goal. And we pretty soon realized that it's an impossible goal because every investor actually wants a different. Some investors are like, I need to see the team first. The team's the most important thing. If they don't put the team, up front, they've done something wrong. And other investors are like, well, I need to see who the customer is and what the market opportunity is, and then we'll worry about the team. And so you can't build the perfect pitch. You've just got to be ready and be able to, present on the day with who you're speaking to. But the big red flags that we look for are, can you provide some sort of justification that there's proven market demand? And we speak to so many founders that have got expertise in an industry or a technology, and so they understand the problem and the opportunity back to front. But it turns out that they're not very good representative of their customers, and they need to get out and really understand the market. And so that is a big red flag if they don't understand that distinction between their understanding of the market and the market's understanding of the market, and they've got some evidence of that. That tends to be a bit of a red flag.
Please check your math also.
Yeah, that's really good.
But math, we care about the math.
One of the things that is my which I know like founders are trying their best to present a great picture, but the lack of whenever I see a pitch with no evidence of traction in it, it always gets me frustrated, because typically founders are misrepresenting the amount of effort that they have gone to and the validation that they've got. It's like, even if you've spoken, you might have done some market research, and from that research, you've identified some trends, things like the size of the market opportunity. It's like that is some evidence of traction. Similarly, if you've spoken to, a very specific niche group of customers that you think are your first early adopter customers, and, you've got some validation, and you've got, user research validation, you've got kind of evidence that there's market demand, maybe you've got people on a wait list, like, tell us about it, because that's something really interesting to continue the conversations. And then Nelly, who I know is one of your LPs at VentureUs, she always says to me, it's like, you've got to be really clear about showing the potential for this massive market. And I think there's confusion from founders, which makes perfect sense, about showing a market opportunity, which could, is not, it's based on hypotheses and whatever data you can get your hands on, but a load of hypotheses, versus financial forecasts, which are designed to be much more kind of specific, and shorter term than, say, a massive market opportunity, which might be, say, 20 years away. And there's the difference between the two, which is really nuanced and critical for founders to get to have a clear understanding of the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we've just got time for one more question. So I'm just going to ask this one. And this is an interesting one, because the question itself kind of implies that you are investing as part of a priced round, versus kind of a startup just pitching on the off chance that you might be interested in just putting some money in. Do you invest always as part of a priced round, or can founders kind of come opportunistically and present their pitch?
That's an interesting question. I feel like in today's market, there's a lot of variations of rounds going on, right? Like, we have some people that like, oh, well, we did this round late last year and we've got this little bit left, and will give us similar terms, right? We see a little bit of that. But yeah, it doesn't, I wouldn't say we're going to reject any deal based off of like what the timing or what the structure of it is. But when we invest, we want to make sure that you have the funding you need to get to that next milestone or to get that growth. And so, so it just kind of depends on the context of the deal. If you're like, oh, you've got all this evidence of where you're at and you just need this little bit more, and it's like just a little bridge to help you, or that makes sense. But if it's like, I'd like to raise, but I'm just talking to you right now, and we don't see how you could take that money and get you along the road to where you need to be, we're going to say you're not raising enough, or we want to wait till you get that milestone for us to put money in. We don't exclusively, we do a lot of post-safe investments, and so it doesn't. Again, it's like similar to like how much money do we give on a deal. It just kind of depends on the circumstances, why you're raising, what you're going to use it for, and us making sure that you can take our money and use it effectively and get where you need to go.
Okay, I'm going to have, given you told me before this Q&A that you're quite concise, I've got one last sneaky question to add in, which I think has got a short answer, which is this one. What are multiples?
Yes. Well, it's something that's important to be aware of, because on the back end, in addition to us digging into, your team and your market, we're looking at the math of making sure that we can have a positive experience when we pick the right investments. As you know, most investors are going to invest in 10, 20 companies, and only a select number of them are going to go big. And so the math has to work. And so when we're looking at a company, we will go out and we will say, okay, well, we know what you're doing. It might be something new, but there are similar companies in the past that we can use to compare, to say, okay, if you're making this much revenue, this is how much we think you can sell the company for. And that plays into our ability to know that we're making the right investment. And so, there are some markets that are, if you're going into as a founder, that are going to be harder to get investment money, like VC money for, because of the low multiples. Like clothing, for example, like a lot of times those investments take 20 years, and the multiple is like 1.2. So like from an investment standpoint, I know it's low. I haven't looked at what it is.
An educated guess.
Yeah, but so it matters. And when you're pitching, if you can't, you're pitching to investors, if there's someone with a similar business to you that has sold for a lot of money, you definitely want to let the investors know that. Yeah. So that's a great thing to have in your pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, somehow an hour has magically flown by. Jenn, thank you so much for your time. I'm just going to put your email address up on the screen right now. So if you, so Jenn, you've said you'd love to meet venture scale early stage companies that are raising or thinking about raising. You can contact Jenn at this email, jen@ventureus.org, and she would love to tell you more about their processes and how they operate and see if you are a good fit. Jenn, thanks so much for being on the call today. Kirk as well, thank you so much for your time.
Been a pleasure. Thanks, Jenn.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk.
Thank you. And if you want any additional help on anything to do with startup building, we have a couple of ways that you can get some free resources from LeapSheep, which I'm just going to bring onto the screen now. I hope. 1 second. Here we go. Restream always takes slightly longer than I'm expecting to load. So if you are a founder and you are working flat out to get your startup to product market fit, the LeapSheep Startup Builder newsletter delivers clear step-by-step guidance to accelerate your progress, and it is completely free. You can join the growing number of savvy founders who rely on Kirk's insights to navigate the startup landscape and avoid the startup graveyard. In addition, you may have noticed if you are following me on LinkedIn, I've done a lot of posts this week around people who are looking to make a leap from a corporate job and working on a startup as a side hustle. How do you know when to go full time as a startup founder? So we offer free LeapSheep Startup Builder strategy sessions to give the founders in this position a diagnosis of exactly where you're at. They're run by a startup expert, so no salespeople, just startup experts who have worked with hundreds of startups and supported by our startup builder system. And you can use the QR code here to book one of these. All right, thank you ever so much to both of you and to any founders who were joining us live. As I mentioned, this is going to be going, the video is going to be going out on YouTube and LinkedIn after the event. Enjoy the rest of your day. Kirk, good morning. Jenn, good afternoon into the evening. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.